additive tasks must be divisible. Unitary task is kind of one piece work. You can't add it up. One example of additive task would be moving companies. If you work for a moving company and your team is moving all the furnitures and personal belongings of one apartment to a new place, we're going to move the whole apartment to a new apartment. And then the different pieces for items in the apartment are going to add together. Eventually, you move everything. You move all the items in the apartment to the new place. That's an additive task. Compensatory tasks are based on average performance. Economic forecast by different economists is one example. Another way of evaluating task performance is the distinction between disjunctive versus conjunctive tasks. Disjunctive tasks, this kind of task depend on the performance of the best group member, usually the expert. If you think about a group project on math problems, on mathematical problems, if you have 4 members to the group, and one of the 4 members is an expert in mathematics, as long as he has the answer, as soon as he or she has the answer to the question, the whole group has the answer. The best group member really determine the outcome of the whole group. Sometimes the medical workers work in teams, and their teams is based on disjunctive performance. If you have a surgical team, there's one expert surgeon, and his performance really sets upper limit of the whole team. Conjunctive tasks are dependent upon the weakest member. The weakest link in the chain will determine how much the team can accomplish. For example, if a whole team is going to hiking, they're going to hike up to the mountain, and the performance is based on the team performance, not individuals. And then all the team members will have to wait for the slowest. The weakest person determine the ultimate outcome of the whole group. Interdependence is very prominent in conjunctive tasks. Another way of evaluating group performance is maximizing versus intellective performance. Maximizing performance is based on getting as much work done as possible, achieving as much mileage as possible. One example would be if you are a farm team, farmers or farm workers picking blueberries, the whole field need to be picked, and you want to get as much done as possible. You want to pick as much as possible, and that's a maximizing task. All the group members must strive to pick as many blueberries as possible. Intellective task is not based on quantity, but based on quality. Usually it's based on the decision-making quality or judgment and decision-making quality. It's not about how much you accomplish, but the quality of the thinking. Another way of evaluating group task performance is the distinction between criterion tasks and judgmental tasks. A criterion task is a task that has clear answer, correct answer. A mathematical problem would be a criterion task. You seek to solve the problem by finding the right answer. On the other hand, judgmental tasks, they don't have a clear right answer. Jury decision in the legal system is a judgmental task. And business decisions are judgmental tasks. You make a business decision to buy another company. Is that a good decision or bad decision? Is that correct decision or incorrect decision? It's relative. There's no absolute right or wrong answers to the questions. It's all judgmental. However, judgments can be evaluated in the quality of the decision by looking at the consequences of the decision. There are quite a lot of research showing out group work is hard. It is very challenging to work in a group. Many of the tasks result in coordination losses. It's hard to coordinate between different people. If you are doing a group project on a presentation for your psychology classes, if you have three group members to your group, it's already hard to coordinate. You have to arrange meetings, and people have different work schedules, people have different class schedules, and the group members may have different levels of motivation. Some group members are more motivated for this class, some are not interested in this class. Some group members may be working full-time, so they don't have a lot of time for crossworks. Coordination losses can be substantial. The Ringelmann effect is a classic demonstration of process loss in group work. It's a classic demonstration of social loafing. So they show that they ask people to pull on a rope. They ask people to pull on the rope individually, that's one condition, or with another person as a two-person team. So from one person to two persons, there's a tiny bit of loss of productivity or performance. But when you have three people, the loss is visible. When you have a team of three, each person is going to pull less hard. And then as the number of people increases, productivity or how hard they pull on the rope, each one of them decreases. This is mostly due to diffusion of responsibility. When you have 7 or 8 people all doing the same thing, pulling on the same rope, each person feels less responsible and less motivated. And your contribution is less visible. And your lack of contribution is also less visible. Nobody knows whether you work hard or not. Your contribution may not even matter because there are 7 other people doing the same thing. That's a social loafing. As the number of team members increases, each person's contribution is lower than the expected contribution. So the whole group contribution, whole group performance is below expectations, social loafing. Then Latini, he is a very well-known social psychologist for the last half century. He has made a lot of contributions to social psychology, especially in group work, in bystander effects, helping behavior. He is a very clever experimenter, and he did some experiments to show the difference between social loafing and coordination loss. Social loafing is mostly motivational. It's mostly based on diffusion of responsibility. But coordination loss is mostly based on the difficulty of coordinating between different group members. Sometimes the group members have to take turns to do things. Sometimes they have to do things unanimously, simultaneously. Timing is very critical for teamwork. So he had this really interesting experiment. And he had people shout as loud as possible. And this line is individual. So you believe you are shouting individually into the microphone, and they record how loud you shout. And then the middle line is imaginary groups. So the researcher tells you that you're shouting together with other people. You are one of the voices. You should shout as loud as possible, but actually there's no other people. Nobody is shouting with you, but you don't know. You think or you believe you are working with other people, but actually you're kind of yelling alone. And this production loss, so this area compared with individual shouting versus shouting in an imagined group, there's a productivity loss. And as the group size increases, the productivity loss increases. So if you believe you're shouting together with another 5 people, you're working in a group of 6 people, your productivity loss compared with if you believe you're doing it alone is quite substantial here. And this part is a loss due to motivation. That is a social loafing. And then if you are shouting in real groups, here, this line is the group that believe that they are shouting in groups. And at the same time, it's real group. Actually, there are real other group members. And then you suffer an additional coordination loss. It's above beyond social loafing. And when you are shouting with a real group members, teammates, you have to coordinate. You have to kind of time your vocalization with other people's, and that produces a coordination loss above and beyond the social loafing. It's clever how the researchers differentiate between coordination loss and social loafing. They try to use experimental procedures, experimental conditions to isolate, separate the effect of social loafing, motivation loss, or diffusion of responsibility from coordination loss, the loss due to the need to coordinate with other group members. Very clever study. Latini did a lot of work in terms of social loafing. And he has a lot to say about what happens to a social loafing. And another phenomenon of group work is so-called groupthink. Groupthink is different from social loafing. Social loafing is slacking off. And groupthink is that when you are working with a group, you hold back on your opinion. You don't speak up. You follow the group. Basically, it's conformity. And it leads to a poor decision making. A lot of this research, this line of research is done in leadership studies. When the leadership team in business, in the military, or even in the government, making strategic decisions, they often fall into the trap of groupthink. And the groupthink is that a group of leaders, when they talk to each other, they're supposed to be creative. They're supposed to consider the pros and cons of all the options, all the alternatives, but they don't. They follow the norm. Well, there are a lot of examples cited in psychology textbooks, how group leaders make poor decisions. One example I'm familiar with is the Second World War, when Japan declared war on the United States and bombed Pearl Harbor. That was a bad decision, the bad decision for the Japanese military, and because the gap between the American power, military power, economic power, and the Japanese power at that time is big. The United States was way much more powerful country than Japan. If you think about this question logically, realistically, there was almost no possibility for Japan to win a war with the United States. But the Japanese military at that time made the decision, and they were unanimous in making the decision to bomb Pearl Harbor and go to war with the United States. Was there any dissident? Were there any members of the leadership group that disagreed with the decision? Actually, there was Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku. He actually secretly disagreed with the decision. When he was in his younger years, he was serving as a military attaché to the Japanese envoy in Washington, D.C. And he was familiar with how powerful the U.S. was. He actually had a lot of strong reservations about the decision to go to war with the United States, but he kept his mouth shut. He didn't speak his mind. And then he went along with the group decision, which was very disastrous. That was a groupthink. Groupthink means that a group of competent leaders, supposedly competent leaders, make poor decisions because there's not enough diversity of voices in the group. On the contrary, there's a strong conformity pressures. Psychologists have come up with a model of the situations that make decisions, make groupthink more possible. First one, there's a time pressure. When the group have to make a decision really quick, really fast, the window of opportunity is really short. You have to do it now or never. And that would create groupthink. And then when there's high cohesiveness and social identity, the military is a good example. The military usually are very cohesive and they are very proud of their identity. It's a sense of honor that binds them together. It's not just the personal interests. And then when they're isolated from other sources of information, elite groups, exclusive groups are more likely to suffer from groupthink. They're isolated from other sources of information. And then when there's a directive, authoritative leadership, when there's a dictator, when there is a clear, powerful voice that sets the agenda and everybody else is a follower, that situation is going to produce a lot of groupthink. And then there's some symptoms of groupthink. When a group is in the mentality of groupthink, there's illusion of invulnerability. This illusion of invulnerability was very clear when the Japanese military leadership made a decision to go to war with the United States, bomb Pearl Harbor, and they felt they were invincible. And they felt that they were protected by the kamikaze, the divine wind. And then there's an illusion of unanimity. Unanimity, everybody agrees with the majority opinion. There's no dissident voice. There's no minority voice. No room for it. And then there's a lot of in-group favoritism, discrimination against out groups. It's us versus them. And there's also little search for new information. These decision makers are blinded. They are oblivion to what's really going on. They lack curiosity for new information, new input. They don't want to hear information that disconfirm with their decisions. And they have a strong belief in the morality of their group. We are the moral, on the moral high ground. They are the aggressors. We have legitimate reasons to protect our interests and defend our country. This kind of moral superiority is a symptom of groupthink. And there's pressure on dissenters to conform. A minority member of this group has different opinions, they don't speak up. Like Yamamoto Isloku, he had strong reservations about the decision to go to war with the United States, but he didn't speak. The conformity pressure, the peer pressure is too strong. The outcome is poor decision making. You make the wrong decisions. Also, there are a lot of studies showing that group brainstorming doesn't work. Group brainstorming, well, this methodology is used a lot in business settings. When people have work, meetings, oftentimes they brainstorm. A lot of research shows that it doesn't work. And individual studies and meta-analysis all found that whatever instructions you give to the group, brainstorming groups do not perform any better than working individually. Oftentimes, the ideas produced by group brainstorming is of low quality, not good ideas. There are several reasons for that. Number one, there's a social loafing, diffusion of responsibility. When you're brainstorming in a group, each person is less responsible and less motivated to think hard. There's also evaluation apprehension. When you are speaking your mind in front of a group, you worry, well, how would the group receive my opinions? Are they going to appreciate it? Are they going to laugh at me? Am I going to make a fool of myself? And that make people resistant or hesitant in their contributions. And I think the most important hurdle in brainstorming is production blocking. Production blocking means that when you're brainstorming, you're not thinking all the time. Most of the time, when you're brainstorming, you worry about the socialization. The socializing, basically brainstorming is a socializing environment. You have to watch other people's responses. You have to watch what you say. You have to take turns to speak, and that blocks the production of ideas. Ideas just don't flow freely out of your mind. Brainstorming is not a good idea for creativity or decision making. Another difficulty in group work is sharing information. In an ideal situation, the group members should pull information together and discuss the unique perspective of each person. But it's hard to do. It's very difficult to do. Researchers did an interesting study on how groups share information or fail to share information. So this is a 3-member group. 3 members are not a whole lot, but it's already difficult for them to share information. And this 3-member group, each of the group members receive information about 2 job candidates. For job candidate B, all the information is transparent. All the 3 group members know the same information. There's no need for sharing. You just have discussions. These 3 members, X, Y, Z, they know all the favorable information about candidate B. 3 pieces of favorable information. But the 3 members have a different information about candidate A. They have one common piece of favorable information about this person. But each of them have unique information about the strengths, particular strengths of the person that is not shared with the other 2. And after they have the 3 people have group discussions, which job candidate they choose. If they choose the really better quality candidate, A is superior because A has 1, 2, 3, 4 strengths, 4 pieces of features favoring this person. B only has 3 favorite points. Most of the groups, the result shows, choose B. That means that the group members are not sharing information about A properly, fully, sufficiently. There's insufficient information sharing about this person. When you have to share information that is unique to each group member, group performance not as good. Sharing information is hard for groups. Based on these findings, researchers had some suggestions to how to minimize the cost of brainstorming to make groups work better. One methodology is called the nominal group technique. Nominal group technique means that you first think individually. Before you come to a group session, group meeting, brainstorming, each group member need to think individually, think hard, generate ideas, generate your contribution, your input, and then you bring your ideas to the group for the discussion. That will be better than the pure brainstorming sessions. Another methodology is to use technology, to use electronic, like a chat group, or teams, electronic brainstorming works better than face-to-face discussions. Why? Because when you are like talking online, you don't have to pay attention to the face cues, to the social cues of a real person. And then you save a lot of time, you save a lot of mental energy. You can focus on the ideas, discussion, rather than the socialization. These are very useful tips from social psychology. Another problem or potential problem with group work is group polarization. When like-minded people get together and have a discussion with each other, their opinions become more extreme. We can see that they become radicalized. And there are different theories about this phenomenon. One theory is social identity theory. So when you are meeting with like-minded people, your social identity becomes very prominent. So when people who are conservative work together with conservative people, being conservative become very important, prominent social identity, and that intensifies their opinions. That is one reason, one potential reason. There's this interesting research in social psychology, political psychology, and the participants were low prejudice people and high prejudice people. Before the low prejudice people have a group discussion, you ask their individual opinions, their prejudice is here. And then for the high prejudice people, before they engage internal discussions, you ask their personal opinions, their prejudice higher. The difference between the two groups at the individual level is substantial. And then you ask each group to have internal discussion. The high prejudice people meet together and talk about their prejudice for 20 minutes, and then you ask their individual opinions again. They become more high prejudiced. Same thing happens with low prejudice people. You get like a few low prejudice liberal people to talk about their opinions about prejudice. After that, you ask their individual prejudice, it becomes even lower. The two groups become polarized. They become even more different after talking with their like-minded peers. And this is group polarization. One reason for this group polarization effect is social identity. The liberals become more liberal after having a meeting with their peers because the meeting would enhance their social identity, being liberals. Another reason is that the persuasive arguments approach. One, the liberals are talking with their like-minded people, with other liberals, they get facilitation. They hear supportive ideas from other people. They become even more convinced about their opinions. And they have a lot of agreement from their peers, and they become more like radicalized. These are the two theories about why group polarization occurs. Here is an interesting factorial design. And this experiment shows group polarization in jury decisions. A jury is a group, and they are trying to decide whether a person is guilty or not. Two conditions. In one condition, the juries receive strong evidence that the person is guilty. In another condition, the jury receive weak evidence about the person's guilt. This is one variable, one independent variable, strong versus weak evidence. Another independent variable is discussion. Well, in one condition, you have no group discussion, and you just report your decision individually. How strongly you believe that person is guilty, judgment, guilt. Another condition is group discussion. You report your decision after you have a group discussion with other jurors. So let's look at the no group discussion. When there's no group discussion, one, there's strong evidence. The jurors individually decide that the person is guilty, very strong. But when there's the evidence is weak, the guilt judgment is weaker. That's obvious. But then what about when the jurors had a group discussion? After discussion, the trend is the same. Faced with strong evidence, the guilt judgment is stronger than when faced with a weak argument. But you see the gap is bigger. The gap between the strong argument and weak argument is bigger after group discussion than before group discussion. Group discussion make people more extreme in their opinions. Social psychologists have something to offer, some tips to offer about how you improve group performance. First, the social psychologists identified some issues with group work, some problems with group work. One major problem is cognitive bias, this illusion of group effectivity. Although the group may not be functioning well, even when the group is dysfunctional, the group members may believe that there is effectiveness. They believe that the group is working well. In order to improve a group performance, we need to break this illusion. The group members need to have a realistic perception of how a group is working. And then another piece of advice is incentives for contribution. And you got to make that, make sure the contribution of each group member is appreciated, rewarded, and receives positive feedback, is welcome. Also, you need to make the contribution of each group member identifiable. When you're doing group project, you need to break the task, the pieces of project into identifiable parts. Okay, here's a PowerPoint. Who is responsible for the PowerPoint slides? Who is responsible for making the presentation? Who is responsible for searching the literature, finding the materials to make the presentation? And who is responsible for making the list of references at the end of the presentation? The contributions of individual group members must be identifiable. Some other advice is You need to give the group enough time to work, and this will prevent groupthink. Time pressure will create a lot of pressure on conformism. Smaller subgroups, dividing groups into a smaller subgroup will be helpful. Make the coordination cost more manageable. The more people in the group, the more social loafing and the more coordination cost. Sometimes it pays, it's good to have a devil's advocate in the group. And this role provides contrary opinions to the majority view. And it allows the group to see all perspectives. When there's a group leader, the leader should not express his or her opinions too fast. The leader should not set the agenda too quickly. Sometimes it's good to have a second chance meetings and to reconsider the previous discussions and decisions. Diversity group members be really helpful. Different cultural backgrounds, different gender identities, different work experiences will offer different views. This will help prevent groupthink